The audience was laughing, but not at the joke. It was that strange, nervous kind of laughter, the kind that lingers just a little too long, the kind that tries to mask discomfort. Jimmy Kimmel leaned forward in his chair, cue card in hand, smirking as the screen behind him displayed a photo of Karoline Leavitt walking up Capitol Hill. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jimmy said, gesturing to the photo, "this is Karoline Leavitt, Trump's 27-year-old press secretary, Gen Z firebrand, and living proof that you can dress like a senator and still sound like a podcast ad." The audience burst out laughing again. Jimmy grinned wide. Karoline sat calmly across from him, her legs crossed, back straight, blazer buttoned. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Jimmy looked over. "No offense," he added. "You're welcome here, of course. This is a safe space for everyone, even people who think facts are optional." More laughter. Karoline didn't flinch. She placed her hand gently on her knee, turned slightly, and said quietly, "Jimmy, the only thing optional tonight is your self-awareness." The crowd froze. Half laugh, half gasp, then complete silence. Even Jimmy's face stiffened. The tension in the room was unmistakable. But before he could respond, we rewind. 20 minutes earlier, backstage, Karoline sat in the green room scrolling through headlines on her phone. Same stories, same tone, different day. Trump's mouthpiece or rising star. Can Gen Z really handle the big leagues? Kimmel preps for verbal fireworks with controversial guest tonight. She turned off the phone and set it on the table. Her aide stood quietly nearby, holding a bottled water and a folded copy of her appearance notes. "You don't have to do this," the aide said quietly. "You don't need the circus." Karoline glanced up. "That's why I'm doing it." "Jimmy's going to come for you," the aide warned. "You know how he plays, sly, sarcastic, constant deflection." Karoline stood and adjusted her jacket. "That's okay," she said. "I brought clarity." On stage 5 minutes before the moment, Jimmy introduced her with charm layered in irony. "Our next guest is America's youngest ever White House press secretary," he said to polite applause. "She's 27, fierce, loyal to Donald Trump, and possibly the only person under 30 who voluntarily uses a landline. Please welcome Karoline Leavitt." The crowd clapped again, louder this time. Karoline walked onto the stage, graceful, controlled. She didn't wave. She nodded once and shook Jimmy's hand. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "You nervous?" he asked with a smirk as they sat. Karoline smiled. "Only about how you'll edit this." A few chuckles from the crowd. Jimmy arched an eyebrow. "Fair," he said. "Let's jump in." The opening questions were light. He asked about her age, about her rise, about being a woman in Washington. Each question wrapped in a joke, like bait hiding a hook. Karoline answered with poise, short, smart, but cautious. Then Jimmy's tone shifted slightly. He leaned forward, eyes bright. "So, Karoline, you work for Donald Trump, the man, the myth, the lawsuit magnet. Tell me, what's harder, defending him to the public or defending him to yourself?" Laughter, applause. Karoline didn't smile. "I don't defend anyone," she said simply. "I explain the facts." Jimmy smirked. "Right. And the facts are what you say they are." Karoline looked him dead in the eyes. "No, they're just what people like you pretend aren't real." The laughter slowed. Jimmy shrugged. "I mean, come on. Trump's facing more charges than a Best Buy TV aisle. How do you look America in the eye and say, this is normal?" Karoline didn't miss a beat. "It's not normal, but neither is pretending this country is stable while comedians with cue cards act like policy experts." Now there were no laughs. Jimmy blinked. "Whoa." Karoline leaned back. "You brought me here to be a punchline. I came here to be a mirror." The audience was still. Jimmy shifted in his chair. "Okay, so you're saying what? That I shouldn't make jokes?" "No," she said. "You should just be ready when one of them laughs back." Then it happened. Jimmy reached for his next card, the gotcha line, the one he thought would make her squirm. He raised the card and looked back at the crowd. "I have a quote from you, January 2021. You said, and I quote, 'Tariffs hurt working families more than they hurt China.' But now you defend Trump's tariff hike as a brilliant economic move." He lowered the card with a satisfied grin. "Explain the math there for us, Professor." Laughter, applause. That's when Karoline paused, smiled, and gave him the line no one forgot. "Jimmy," she said, her voice measured, "the only thing optional tonight is your self-awareness." Gasps, silence. And that moment, the audience didn't clap. They didn't boo, they just froze. Jimmy looked stunned, his grin cracked. His hand slowly lowered the cue card to his desk. And Karoline, she didn't blink. The moment hung in the air like static. Jimmy blinked twice, lips parted, cue card forgotten on the desk in front of him. It was the kind of pause that doesn't just break rhythm, it exposes the fact that rhythm was all there ever was. Karoline didn't press the moment. She didn't lean in. She didn't raise her voice. She simply sat there, calm, still, unapologetically in control. The audience began to murmur, low voices exchanged glances. A few clapped, unsure if they were allowed. Others just stared. And then Jimmy did what professionals do when the curtain tears mid-performance. He reached for a laugh. "Well," he said, forcing a chuckle, "I guess that makes you the mirror and me the funhouse." Some polite laughter trickled in, but the momentum was gone. The room had shifted. Jimmy adjusted in his seat, trying to recenter. "All right, let's reset," he said, tapping the next card. "Tariffs. We've seen prices rise. We've seen markets fluctuate. And we've seen your boss raise them higher than his golf scores. Why should the average American believe this isn't just economic self-sabotage with a flag on it?" Karoline nodded slowly. "Because for the first time in decades," she said, "the average American is the priority, not the importer, not the lobbyist, and not the overseas factory." "But prices went up," Jimmy argued. "They did," she said. "Short-term pressure, long-term power. We've watched a country outsource its entire backbone for cheap goods. Tariffs are a correction, not a punishment." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "So you're saying people should be okay paying more?" "I'm saying people should be told the truth," she replied. "And the truth is, cheap is expensive when it costs you your job." That landed. The audience responded, not with laughter but something rarer, a pause of agreement. Jimmy rolled his chair back slightly. "So we're just rewriting economics now," Karoline shrugged. "You rewrite monologues every night. This is just Monday for me." Another ripple in the audience. Jimmy grinned, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're good," he said. "I'm informed," she corrected. "There's a difference." Jimmy glanced offstage. His producer was giving the time signal. 10 minutes left in the segment. He turned back to Karoline. "Okay," he said, tone sharpening. "Let's talk Trump." Karoline folded her hands on her lap. "He's not here," she said. "No," Jimmy replied. "But you're here for him." "I'm here for the country," she said. "He's just the only one who let me through the door." Jimmy smirked. "That sounds like loyalty or dependency." Karoline stared at him. "That sounds like someone who doesn't understand how hard it is to be heard when you're 27, female, and not backed by a Hollywood PR team." The crowd murmured again. Jimmy sat back. "I get it," he said. "You're a fighter." Karoline tilted her head. "No," she said. "I'm a listener." That's why it's so disruptive. People expect shouting. They don't know what to do with silence that bites harder than a joke. That line landed hard. The audience reacted, one loud mm. A small burst of clapping. Someone in the front row even whispered, "Whoa." Jimmy exhaled, lips tight. He glanced back at his cue cards. There were still a few jokes written down, safeties, but none of them felt usable now. Karoline watched him. "I didn't come here to win," she said quietly. "I came to show what it looks like when someone under 30 talks policy without a teleprompter." Jimmy looked up. "And how's that going?" she smiled. "Well, you haven't landed a punch yet, so better than expected." Laughter this time, but it wasn't for him, it was for her. Jimmy looked toward the camera. "We'll be right back with more from Karoline Leavitt, assuming she leaves me standing." The crowd chuckled. But beneath the lights, the dynamic had shifted. She wasn't the guest anymore. She was the one holding the room. "Want to know what happened next?" Well, before we dive into it, if you're enjoying this story and love such dramas, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber keeps me motivated to dig deeper, uncover more wild stories, and bring you even crazier content. Your support means everything. It's what keeps this channel going strong. And trust me, there's plenty more chaos coming your way. Back to the story. Backstage control room, a producer muttered. "She's walking him like a dog." Another crew member watching a live Twitter feed called out, "The clip's already trending. Self-awareness line is everywhere. We need to prep for blowback." Steve, the showrunner, folded his arms. "She's not just answering questions," he said. "She's flipping the interview upside down." Every answer makes his next one harder. The room was quiet for a beat. Then Steve added, "And we invited her." Back on stage, returned from break, Jimmy smiled into the camera. "We're back with Karoline Leavitt, who has spent the last 15 minutes educating me and my audience with a smile and not a single joke." "How are you doing this without an index card?" Karoline smiled back. Try working a town hall in New Hampshire during a snowstorm. You learn to be quick." He nodded. "Fair. But let's talk about something serious," he said, shifting again. "You speak calmly, you use numbers, you don't yell, and yet people still call you dangerous. Why do you think that is?" Karoline didn't hesitate. "Because calm truth sounds radical in a world trained to only hear outrage." The audience murmured again. She wasn't just deflecting anymore, she was teaching. Jimmy tried one more shot. "So, no regrets?" Karoline looked at him carefully. "Only one," she said. "And what's that?" "That I walked onto this stage thinking I'd be the controversial one." And that's when the audience truly shifted. Claps, nods. A few people stood, unsure if it was too soon for a standing ovation. It wasn't. Jimmy adjusted his posture. It was subtle but obvious to anyone watching closely. Shoulders pulled back, chin lifted a little higher. Not confidence, recovery. He knew he was behind now, and Karoline wasn't just holding her ground. She was controlling the narrative. He glanced at the crew. The segment had gone longer than planned, but cutting it now would look like surrender. So he pressed on. "Okay," Jimmy said, flipping a card. "Let's talk about honesty." Karoline didn't move. Jimmy continued. "You've said the media distorts facts, that satire isn't accountability. But Trump's administration, I mean, come on. Transparency isn't exactly its thing either." He raised a brow. "So how does someone like you, who says you care about the truth, work for a man who, let's say, has a creative relationship with it?" Laughter. Not loud but tense. Karoline nodded slowly. "You want the savage answer or the honest one?" Jimmy smirked. "Dealer's choice." She leaned forward, her voice low and clear. "Honest answer. Because the truth isn't about the person saying it, it's about whether it's true. And unlike your punchlines, my facts don't need a laugh track." Gasps from the crowd. That was the first jab that landed with real weight. Jimmy exhaled too quickly and laughed nervously. "Okay, wow, we're swinging now." Karoline didn't blink. "You asked." Jimmy reached for another card. "All right, I got more. Let's talk about character." He read the quote aloud. Karoline Leavitt once said, "We can't fix America with hashtags and hope. But here you are, trending, using clips to gain political capital. Doesn't that make you the same as the influencers you criticize?" Karoline paused, then said, "I said we can't fix America with hashtags. I never said we can't expose hypocrisy with them." The room buzzed again, but she wasn't done. "You mock us for using social media, but you clip your own monologues to chase views online. What's the difference, Jimmy?" "I post to reach voters. You post to stay relevant." Now it wasn't just gasps, it was the beginning of a turn. The audience, once loyal to their late-night king, was starting to shift. Jimmy leaned back, masking it with humor. Okay, you've come prepared. You're sharp, I'll give you that." Karoline gave a tight smile. "I don't carry cue cards." More murmurs, some clapping. Then Jimmy took his final shot. "And how do you explain Trump calling the media the enemy of the people? Doesn't that include shows like this? Should I feel threatened right now?" Karoline's smile faded. She looked him dead in the eyes. "You should feel responsible." Silence. She leaned forward again, calm but deadly serious. "When you laugh at the pain of half the country and then act surprised when they stop trusting you, that's not comedy. That's gaslighting." Dead quiet, Jimmy swallowed. And then Karoline delivered the savage comeback that the internet would replay 1,000,000 times by sunrise. "You're not the enemy of the people, Jimmy," she said softly. "You're just not listening to them." The silence cracked into stunned applause, not from everyone, but from enough. A woman in the front row stood up. Others followed. Jimmy looked around, confused, caught. His punchline never came. Karoline sat back, composed, finished, and Jimmy Kimmel, for the first time in years, had nothing left to say. Control room live feed reaction producers stared at the monitor. One clapped slowly, under his breath. Another whispered, "She just ended the segment, and he didn't even notice it was over." Someone replied, "She just ended more than that." Backstage, Karoline's team watches in silence. Phones buzzed nonstop, notifications flashing, trending hashtags climbing in real time. #Karoline vs Kimmel, #savage comeback, #she did not stutter. One aide whispered, "I think that was the moment." Another nodded. No recovery from that. On stage, Jimmy tries to regain control. He forced a laugh. "Well, we'll be right back after this, if I survive the next commercial break." The crowd chuckled, but it was light, uneasy, because everyone felt it. Karoline hadn't just stunned Jimmy. She'd exposed the difference between telling jokes and being the joke. 10:02 p.m. EST 10 minutes after the segment ends, Karoline walked off stage without a word. Her team followed behind, silent but electrified. Back in the green room, her phone was a live wire. Notifications stacked faster than they could clear. Fox News. Karoline Leavitt dismantles Kimmel's stage persona in viral exchange breaking trends. The line heard around the world, "You're not the enemy, you're just not listening." X, formerly Twitter. Karoline vs Kimmel is #1 worldwide. She sat down slowly, still calm. Sipping from a bottle of water, her aide glanced at the phone. "You just hit 1 million views in 10 minutes, they whispered. "That clip is spreading like wildfire." Karoline didn't look surprised. She just nodded. Meanwhile, Jimmy's dressing room, the vibe was completely different. Jimmy sat on the couch, staring at his monitor. The last few seconds of the interview played again. "You're not the enemy of the people, Jimmy. You're just not listening to them." It hit different this time. He turned to his producer, who stood nervously in the doorway. "Tell me we can reframe that in the edit," Jimmy muttered. The producer cleared his throat. It was live. Jimmy exhaled long and heavy. There was no undo button. 10:10 p.m. TikTok, X, Instagram Reels, the line was everywhere. Young people posted duets. She walked into enemy territory and didn't just survive, she converted the room. Clips were captioned with, "She didn't yell. She didn't laugh. She leveled him." Late Night just got a wake-up call from Gen Z. A mashup of the moment with dramatic music hit 2.4 million views in 30 minutes. Even people who disagreed with her politics were sharing it, saying, "This is how you do it. Poised, prepared, unshakable." 10:15 p.m. CNN panel discussion begins on air. A panel of hosts sat frozen as the clip played again. One commentator shook his head. "This isn't just about politics. This was a generational moment." Another added, "You had a late-night host with a massive platform get outmatched, not by volume but by precision." A third said, "She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even interrupt. She dismantled the format." 10:20 p.m. Jimmy's writers meet in panic mode. "We need a response," one said. "Something sharp, something fast. We can't go on tomorrow pretending it didn't happen," another added. "That would look weak." Jimmy stood, rubbing his forehead. "What do we do?" he asked. "Mock her." A long pause. Then one writer muttered, "You already did. That's what got us here." 10:25 p.m. Karoline posts a statement, short, direct, strategic. "I didn't go to war with Jimmy Kimmel. I sat down, answered questions, and told the truth." If that's what stuns people now, maybe it says more about the state of media than it does about me. The post got 30,000 likes in 5 minutes. Comments flooded in, no gimmicks, no theater, just facts. She flipped the room with one sentence. "This is what leadership looks like." 10:33 p.m. Trump breaks his silence. Donald J. Trump at Real Donald Trump. Karoline Leavitt was incredible tonight on Jimmy Kimmel. Absolutely crushed it. Calm, sharp, and totally unstoppable. She is a star, a future leader. Proud of her. Kimmel was left gasping for punchlines. The tweet hit 2 million impressions in 12 minutes. Mainstream media outlets flashed breaking banners. Trump praises Leavitt's Kimmel appearance. The hilt. "Leavitt crushed it," says Trump. Backs her as rising voice. Fox News. Kimmel mocked. Leavitt crowned. Daily Caller. 10:42 p.m. College campuses react. Clips from the episode were projected in student halls. In one live-streamed debate club, a Gen Z student stood up and said, "We've spent years being told calm equals weak. Karoline proved calm can command a room. Cheers." Another student replied, "She wasn't looking for approval, that's why she got it." 11 o'clock p.m. Inside Kimmel's writer's room, silence. Jimmy finally spoke. "She didn't perform better than me," he said. "She just didn't need the performance." A writer looked up. "What do we do tomorrow?" Jimmy thought for a second, then said quietly, "Maybe we don't try to make it funny." 11:10 p.m. Karoline leaves the studio. There were no paparazzi, no press conference, just one quiet moment as she stepped into the black SUV waiting out back. Inside, her aide showed her the latest update, over 12 million views. "Major anchors asking to interview you. Morning shows too." Karoline nodded, but her voice was calm. "We don't chase the buzz," she said. "We set the tone." And then she looked out the window as the car pulled away. The lights of Los Angeles faded behind her, but the spark she left, that wasn't fading anytime soon. 6 o'clock a.m. New York City morning show studios. The news cycle had fully tilted. No longer framed as Trump's press secretary, Karoline Leavitt was now being introduced as the woman who made Jimmy Kimmel flinch on live TV. Every major morning show opened with a clip of the now iconic moment. "You're not the enemy of the people, Jimmy. You're just not listening to them." One anchor called it the line that silenced Hollywood. Another labeled it the moment late night got outclassed by Generation Z. 6:17 a.m. The View. The host sat tense around the table, replaying the clip. Sunny Hostin frowned. "I don't like her politics, but she was calm, composed, and honestly unshakable." Joy Behar scoffed. "She's just a well-trained robot for Trump's team." Alyssa Farah Griffin cut in. "Maybe, but she walked into enemy territory and she didn't fold. That takes skill and guts." The audience clapped, not huge, but enough to make Behar glance awkwardly at the camera. 7:02 a.m. Twitter/X trends update #Karoline crushed it #1 #Kimmel collapse #3 #Gen Z power #5 Even pop culture pages began sharing memes, placing Karoline beside calm icons like Keanu Reeves and Michelle Obama under captions like "Poise is the new power." Political accounts on both sides jumped in. Ben Shapiro: "She didn't interrupt, she didn't shout, she dismantled a comedian with facts, study her." Andrew Yang: "Agree or disagree with her politics, this was a masterclass in presence." Chelsea Handler: "I hate that she was effective, but she was." 8:45 a.m. Jimmy Kimmel's studio, damage control. Jimmy met with his team again. He'd been up since 4 a.m., rewatching the footage in silence. "This isn't about one bad segment," one writer said. "It's about what she represented. She didn't play your game, and it worked." Jimmy rubbed his eyes. "I underestimated her," he admitted. Another writer asked, "So what now?" Jimmy stared at the monitor. The freeze frame of Karoline staring him down was burned into every major thumbnail online. "We don't respond today," he said. "We sit with it." 10:00 a.m. Karoline's new video message drops. It wasn't flashy, just her, seated by a window, no makeup team, no teleprompter. "What happened last night wasn't a takedown. It wasn't a fight. It was a conversation, one that millions of Americans have been waiting to see. I didn't win anything. I just showed up as someone who's not afraid to be outnumbered, outframed, or outscripted." Pause. "And if calm, clear speech stuns people now, then we have a lot more work to do than we think." She ended the video with one sentence: "The mic isn't just for the loudest anymore." 11:12 a.m. NPR drops a midday special. "The Karoline Effect," a respected political analyst summarized it best. Karoline's approach was anti-performance. That's why it worked. In a world trained to reward shouting, she used restraint as a weapon. What makes this different is that the left is talking about it too. They're not mocking her. They're trying to figure out how they missed the shift. 1:07 p.m. Unexpected ally speaks up. A former Obama speechwriter tweeted, "I've written hundreds of lines meant to pierce through noise." Karoline's "You're not the enemy, you're just not listening" is the most effective political sentence I've heard in a decade. The post went viral instantly. 2:00 p.m. College poll goes public. A student-led political survey showed 68% of Gen Z viewers believed Karoline won the exchange. 74% said they felt heard by what she said. 47% said they don't usually watch politics, but watch this whole thing. 2:45 p.m. Karoline gets a call. She answered quietly. It was from a moderate senator, someone not typically in her camp. "I disagree with most of what you stand for," the senator admitted, "but I've never seen anyone disarm a crowd like that with less than 10 words. Karoline smiled faintly. "I wasn't trying to disarm them," she said. "I was trying to remind them what the conversation should sound like." 3:33 p.m. Trump campaign email subject line: "She didn't just defend me, she defended you." Karoline Leavitt walked into the belly of the beast last night and didn't back down. She stood for working Americans, for common sense, and for truth. "We're building a movement of clarity," and she just lit the spark. Donations poured in, $1.3 million in under 2 hours. 5:00 p.m. Karoline walks into a town hall in New Hampshire. There were more cameras than usual. More reporters, but she wasn't there for them. She stepped up to the mic, took a breath, and addressed the crowd. "The internet thinks I just had a moment, but I'm not here for moments. I'm here for momentum." Applause erupted. And somewhere, far from the lights, Jimmy Kimmel sat at his desk, still rewriting tomorrow's monologue without a punchline. 7:02 p.m. Washington, D.C. Newsroom roundtables begin by evening. The talking points had shifted from "was it a win?" to "what happens now?" One news anchor on a primetime political show framed it bluntly. Karoline Leavitt did in 12 minutes what most press secretaries couldn't do in 4 years. She made the entire country stop and actually listen. A senior editor at Politico put it this way: she didn't just answer Jimmy Kimmel, she answered the question America didn't know it was asking. Can Gen Z lead without the theatrics? 8:20 p.m. Inside Jimmy Kimmel's writer room they were quiet, no snarky notes, no satire sketches. Just tension. Jimmy stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand, staring at the phrase someone had scribbled, "when calm becomes the weapon." He turned to his team. "I think we got beat," he said. A younger writer asked, "So what now?" Jimmy nodded slowly. "We go honest tomorrow. No bits. No gags, just truth." Someone scoffed. "Since when do we do truth?" Jimmy looked up. Since the audience stopped laughing. 9:15 p.m. Karoline's final interview of the day. She sat on a live stream with a low-key independent podcast, just 2 hosts and a mic. "We're not mainstream," one of the hosts joked, "but somehow we've got the most talked-about woman in America right now sitting in our guest chair." Karoline laughed lightly. "That's because I'm not mainstream either." The host leaned in. "What's been the hardest part of the last 24 hours?" Karoline looked down for a second, then said, trying to stay grounded while everything around me tries to make me a headline, "You think this moment will last?" Karoline's eyes steadied. "No, moments don't last, but movements do." She looked into the camera. This wasn't about owning Jimmy. It wasn't about going viral. It was about proving that we can show up, speak clearly, and still be heard. That's all most Americans want, to be heard. 9:47 p.m. Across the nation, in diners in Ohio, in college dorms in Florida, in quiet living rooms in Montana, people replayed that one line again and again. "You're not the enemy of the people, Jimmy. You're just not listening to them." It didn't sound like a zinger anymore. It sounded like a correction. 10:30 p.m. Karoline's final move in a dark, quiet room. She drafted one last message. It wasn't a tweet. It wasn't a viral clip. It was a letter, posted the old-school way, typed, signed, scanned, uploaded as a full page. The headline read, "Dear America, I'm not done." The message: "I've heard from students, veterans, nurses, factory workers, small business owners, comedians, critics, and even politicians I disagree with. Some praised me. Some challenged me. All of them reminded me why I do this. Not for applause, not for headlines, but because leadership is about showing up, even in uncomfortable places, especially in uncomfortable places. So here's my promise to you. I will continue to speak with clarity. I will show up where I'm not expected. And I will never confuse volume with strength, because America doesn't need louder voices. It needs better ones." Signed, Karoline Leavitt. 11:15 p.m. Final scene. Karoline stood alone on the steps of the Capitol. No cameras, no noise. Just her, a scarf around her neck and a breeze moving through the columns. She looked out across the empty plaza and whispered to herself. They were stunned by one line. Let's see what they do with the next 1,000. She walked away, not because she was finished, but because she had just begun.